What would you do if the life-sustaining equipment keeping your child alive suddenly erupted in shrill alarms, and when you rushed to their side, you found someone smirking over it, soda dripping from their hands? Some moments change everything. For me, it was the desperate, rattling sound of my daughter Lily's breathing that split open my world, and the unthinkable image of Karen Whitmore standing over her, satisfied like she had won some grotesque contest. My name is Dr. Emily Harris. I'm the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Central Heart Institute in Austin, Texas, and the single mother of the most extraordinary 11-year-old girl you could ever hope to meet. Lily was born with advanced bronchopulmonary dysplasia, a complex term that meant, simply, she needed a portable ventilator at all times to survive. That device was her breath, her shield against the world. When we moved to Eagle Ridge Estates, it was supposed to be a fresh beginning after years weighed down by grief. After losing my husband Adam to a sudden aneurysm, Eagle Ridge looked perfect. Wide one-story homes for accessibility, quiet streets, proximity to the hospital, and a supposed family-friendly environment. The real estate agent had called it paradise. She just forgot to mention that paradise had a queen, and her name was Karen Whitmore. From the moment we arrived, Karen's presence hovered over us like a thundercloud. A former real estate executive, she wore her title of HOA President like a crown welded to her head. She patrolled the sidewalks in crisp linen outfits, her perfectly manicured nails tapping angrily against her ever-present iPad, recording infractions real and imagined. 2 days after we moved in, the first knock came. Through the peephole, I spotted her, mid-60s, silver hair in an aggressive bob, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. I opened the door, expecting maybe a neighborly welcome. What I got was a summons. "Dr. Harris," she said, not smiling. "I'm Karen Whitmore, president of the Eagle Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. We have standards here." She gestured toward my front window where Lily's ventilators sat, visible beside her drawing table. Medical equipment must not be visible from the street. Section 72 of our community guidelines. It's about maintaining property values. I blinked, stunned. "That's my daughter's ventilator," I said. "She needs it to breathe." Karen's lips tightened into a line, so thin it almost disappeared. "Rules are rules, doctor. I'm sure you'll find a tasteful way to conceal it." She thrust a thick binder at me, HOA bylaws, and left, already tapping her notes into her tablet. That was just the beginning. Every week, a new violation notice arrived. The accessibility ramp at the back? Unauthorized modification. The specially reserved medical parking space? Improperly marked. The additional portable AC unit we installed to regulate Lily's temperature? An eyesore requiring immediate screening. I fought back, of course, citing ADA regulations, filing appeal after appeal. But Karen was relentless, like a machine built only to deny and humiliate. The worst? She cited the soft whirring noise of Lily's ventilator for violating noise ordinances. It wasn't even as loud as a kitchen fridge. I stayed composed on the surface because I had to be strong for Lily, but inside, the anger churned hotter with every passing day. It wasn't just about aesthetics. Karen saw Lily's existence as a blemish on her perfect community, and she wasn't satisfied until we were made to feel like intruders in our own home. Maria, my next-door neighbor, said it best one evening as we watched Lily and her son Diego playing on the lawn. "She hates anything she can't control," Maria said. "And Lily reminds her that some things, some lives, are bigger, messier, and more beautiful than her stupid little rules." At first, I tried to believe it was just pettiness, just ignorance. But then came the HOA summer pool party, and Karen's mask finally slipped, revealing something far uglier than mere obsession with appearances. The Eagle Ridge Estates pool had been one of the big selling points when we moved, fully accessible, wide ramps, zero-depth entry for kids like Lily. She had been buzzing about the summer bash for weeks, carefully planning how to explain her ventilator to new friends. She even decorated her ventilator's waterproof casing with colorful superhero stickers. "Ventilator girl," she told me, proudly holding up her drawings. A superhero who breathes through science and kindness. The morning of the party was already sweltering Texas humidity thick enough to swim through. We packed Lily's cooling vest, backup batteries, a full kit of emergency supplies, and headed to the pool, ready to be normal. For the first few hours, it was magic. Lily dipped her toes in the cool water, sketching with Diego and laughing with a group of kids who didn't blink twice at the machine humming softly beside her. For the first time in months, I let myself hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could belong here. That was when Karen arrived. Wearing a bright floral cover-up and giant sunglasses, Karen swept onto the scene like a movie villain making her entrance. Her husband Greg trailed behind, carrying an ostentatious designer cooler, looking miserable. I spotted her the moment she saw Lily. The twitch of her mouth, the calculating glint in her eye. And I knew, deep down, that something terrible was about to happen. At first, Karen kept her distance, hovering at the far end of the pool like a shark circling its prey. She sipped from a wine glass, laughing loudly at things no one else found funny, positioning herself so that every few minutes she could glare toward Lily's shaded lounge chair. I tried to ignore her. I focused on Lily, my brilliant, stubborn girl, who was explaining the superhero powers of Ventilator Girl to a group of fascinated children. I watched Diego help Lily adjust her sketchbook when her ventilator tube tugged at the corner. I listened to the soft background hum of the machine, steady and comforting like a heartbeat. For a few precious moments, everything felt almost normal. Then Karen made her move. She sauntered over casually, her sandals slapping sharply against the pool deck, a practiced look of innocent curiosity plastered across her face. Well, she said, crouching near Lily, her voice syrupy sweet. What do we have here? Some kind of art project. Lily, ever polite, looked up. This is my ventilator. It helps me breathe, she said matter-of-factly, holding up her drawing. And this is Ventilator Girl. She saves people. Karen's smile froze. A tight twitch at the corner of her mouth betrayed her discomfort. Ah, she said. How charming. Though I do wonder if it's safe having devices like that so close to water. It's built for mobility, I said, stepping forward, my voice cold but controlled. Sealed casing. Backup alarms. Hospital-grade safeguards. It's safer than half the lawnmowers people store in their garages. Karen tilted her head, studying Lily's ventilator like it was a personal affront. You know, sometimes things meant to be helpful can cause unintended problems, she said with a slow blink. Accidents happen all the time. Something about the way she said it, lazy, almost gleeful, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Before I could reply, Greg, her husband, appeared at her elbow, his face pale and sweating. Karen, he muttered under his breath. Come on, leave them alone. For a second, just a second, I saw something rare, hesitation. A flicker of calculation crossed her face, like she was weighing whether this particular battle was worth it. And then she smiled, stepped back, and disappeared into the crowd. I didn't relax. Not really. Somewhere deep inside, a warning bell was tolling. I checked Lily's equipment, battery full, airflow stable, emergency inhaler within reach, and made Lily promise to stay put. I'm going to grab your sunscreen from the car, I said. 2 minutes. Press the blue button if anything happens. I know, Mom, Lily said, rolling her eyes, that preteen exasperation making me smile despite everything. I hurried toward the parking lot, my sandals slapping against the scorching pavement. The car was only a few rows away, but the Texas sun felt oppressive, baking the asphalt into a shimmering mirage. It took maybe 2 minutes, maybe less, but it was enough. As I rounded the corner back toward the pool gate, I heard it, the shriek of Lily's ventilator alarm. High, sharp, and absolutely terrifying. People were shouting. Children were crying. And then, worst of all, Lily's ragged, desperate wheezing reached my ears. I sprinted. The scene that burned itself into my memory forever awaited me. Lily collapsed sideways on her lounge chair, struggling for air, her ventilator flashing critical failure alarms. And Karen, standing over her, holding an empty soda can, Dr. Pepper still dripping from the corners. There was no panic on Karen's face, only irritation, like someone inconvenienced by a stubborn piece of furniture. What happened? I screamed, dropping to Lily's side, hands moving automatically to disconnect the compromised main unit and activate the emergency system strapped under her chair. Karen took a small, deliberate step back. Oh dear, she said with mock concern. I think I might have tripped. Spilled a bit. These things are so delicate, aren't they? Liar. But before I could even open my mouth to respond, someone else was already moving. Nathan Turner, the civil rights attorney who lived a few houses down, pushing through the crowd with his phone outstretched. I was filming my son's dive, he said grimly. And I caught it. He turned the screen toward me. The footage was crystal clear. Karen, glancing around, approaching Lily's ventilator casually, tipping her can deliberately over the ventilation ports while Lily looked away, distracted by another child. The audio was even worse. Karen's voice, low and vicious, captured perfectly. "Let's see if you can stay at the party now." My blood turned to ice. Around us, parents began gathering. Someone was already calling 911. Maria was kneeling beside me, helping check Lily's vitals, her nurse's training kicking in like a reflex. "She's dropping oxygen fast," Maria whispered urgently. "Emily, we need EMS. Now." "They're on their way," someone shouted. Lily's face was pale, her small body fighting for every breath, but the emergency backup ventilator was whirring to life, stabilizing her with each passing second. Still, the damage had been done. The sugary soda had short-circuited the main ventilator's primary systems. If Lily hadn't had that emergency unit strapped under her chair, if she had panicked for even a minute longer, I couldn't finish the thought. I wouldn't. I looked up at Karen, at the smugness evaporating from her face as Nathan's video played on a second neighbor's phone, and I spoke without thinking. "You tried to kill my daughter." Karen scoffed, her voice cracking. "Don't be dramatic. It was an accident. And frankly, that thing shouldn't be near a pool anyway. It's a hazard." The words barely finished leaving her mouth before a chorus of gasps erupted from the crowd. Richard, Greg, stood behind her, ghost pale, shaking his head in silent horror. I realized, with sudden clarity, that even he hadn't known how far Karen had fallen. The police arrived within minutes, followed by paramedics. While Dr. Lawrence, a pediatrician neighbor, stabilized Lily's oxygen levels, Nathan handed the officers his phone, explaining exactly what they'd find recorded there. The senior officer's face hardened as he listened. And then, quietly but firmly, he said, "Ma'am, we're detaining you on suspicion of aggravated assault. You have the right to remain silent." Karen's face crumpled. For the first time since I met her, her veneer cracked. She wasn't the queen anymore. She was just another petty tyrant facing the consequences of her cruelty. And this time, no HOA bylaws would save her. The flashing lights of the police cruisers still stained the evening air red and blue when the FBI arrived. 2 black SUVs pulled up to the community center parking lot, and from them stepped a woman whose very presence seemed to command the chaos into silence. Agent Tanya Rodriguez, mid-40s, crisp black suit, dark hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, and eyes sharp enough to slice through steel. I recognized the type instantly. I had worked with trauma surgeons who had that same energy, ruthless competence born from seeing the very worst humanity could offer. She approached me directly, flashing a badge that shimmered under the setting sun. "Dr. Emily Harris?" "Yes," I said, clutching Lily's bag tighter against my chest. "I'm Agent Rodriguez with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We've been briefed by local PD. Due to the nature of the assault, deliberate tampering with life-sustaining medical equipment, this falls under federal jurisdiction." Around us, the residents of Eagle Ridge Estates gathered in stunned, whispering knots. Karen sat handcuffed on the curb, her designer cover-up stained with soda, her sunglasses crooked on her head. Greg stood 10 feet away, refusing to look at her, arms crossed like he was physically holding himself together. "We'll be securing video evidence, gathering witness statements, and documenting the scene," Agent Rodriguez continued. "This is serious, Doctor. Very serious." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I have Nathan Turner's video recording, and multiple witnesses." "Good," she said. "We'll need all of it." The ADA, the Civil Rights Act, what she did touches a lot of federal statutes. This wasn't just cruelty. It was a hate crime. The word hit like a hammer blow. Hate crime. Not just negligence. Not just an accident. An act of malice, targeted because my daughter dared to exist outside the limits of Karen Whitmore's picture-perfect fantasy. As paramedics prepped Lily for transport, Maria squeezed my shoulder. "You're not alone, Emily," she said fiercely. "We're all behind you." And it wasn't just empty words. The HOA board, the same board that once cowered under Karen's thumb, called an emergency meeting within 48 hours. I was invited. So was Nathan Turner. So were half a dozen residents who had finally found the courage to speak. The room where the meeting was held, usually sterile and formal, rows of chairs and carefully arranged flower centerpieces, buzzed with anger. Margaret Ellis, an older woman who had served as secretary for years, stood at the podium, papers trembling in her hand. "We cannot, in good conscience," she said, voice cracking slightly, continue to allow this HOA to be associated with discriminatory practices. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some people, mostly Karen's old allies, shifted uncomfortably. But others, mothers holding children's hands, elderly couples leaning on canes, teenagers with skateboards tucked under chairs, nodded grimly. Nathan stood up. In addition to the criminal case, he said clearly, a civil lawsuit is being prepared. On behalf of Dr. Harris, and potentially others. He paused. And I should mention, discovery is going to be very, very illuminating. The implication was clear. Any prior complaints, any patterns of discrimination, they would all come to light. And Karen's sins didn't stop at Lily. One by one, the story spilled out. The family with the autistic son whose backyard sensory swing Karen demanded removed because it looked tacky. The Vietnam veteran whose wheelchair ramp she fined for not being aesthetically pleasing. The widowed teacher fined for excessive plant growth when she couldn't maintain her garden after hip surgery. Each testimony was like a brick slamming into the polished facade Karen had spent years building. The tipping point came when Greg Whitmore, Karen's own husband, stood up. He looked wrecked. Not physically, he still wore the expensive watch, the designer belt. But inside, he was a man who had finally seen the monster he had lived with. I supported her for too long, he said hoarsely. I paid the fines she issued. I funded her surveillance system. I thought she was protecting the neighborhood. He swallowed hard. I was wrong. Silence. No one interrupted him. I'm resigning my position as HOA treasurer immediately, he said. And I will fully cooperate with any investigation. Margaret wiped her eyes. A motion was proposed. Immediate removal of Karen Whitmore as HOA president. Suspension of the entire current board pending full audit. Emergency appointment of a neutral interim committee. The vote wasn't even close. Unanimous. For the first time since we moved in, I exhaled fully. Not just relief, but something deeper. Vindication. Justice. Outside the meeting, as people trickled into the warm Texas night, I found Nathan leaning against a pillar, arms crossed. That was only the beginning, he said. I nodded. I know. He smiled, grim but satisfied. They wanted aesthetic perfection, he said. Now they're going to get legal perfection instead. The news broke 3 days after the emergency HOA meeting. At first, it was a blip, a local story, buried beneath weather reports and minor scandals. But Nathan, ever the strategist, knew better. He leaked the video. A 30-second clip. Karen Whitmore, in full living color, deliberately tipping a soda can over a child's ventilator while whispering her venomous words. Let's see if you can stay at the party now. The footage went viral within hours. By the next morning, our quiet suburb of Eagle Ridge Estates had become the epicenter of national outrage. Headlines screamed across the internet. HOA president accused of sabotaging disabled child's medical equipment. Justice for Lily. Community turns against HOA tyrant. Federal hate crime investigation shakes Texas suburb. News vans lined the streets. Journalists camped on sidewalks. Talk show hosts debated HOA overreach, disability rights, and the dark underbelly of suburban perfection. Karen's name was mud. No publicist could have salvaged the disaster she created. Meanwhile, Lily lay in her hospital bed, watching it all unfold with wide, wondering eyes. Mom, she said one evening, fiddling with her foreline. Why are they calling me brave? I was just breathing. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Sometimes, I said, just existing in a world that wants you invisible is the bravest thing anyone can do. The hospital transformed into a fortress of support. Balloons, cards, letters flooded in, not just from Eagle Ridge, but from across the country. Children sent drawings of Ventilator Girl battling villains with names like prejudice and hate. Adults wrote heartfelt notes thanking Lily for showing what true strength looks like. Medical companies reached out too, offering upgraded ventilator systems, scholarship funds, and educational opportunities. And quietly, almost without planning, a movement was born. Nathan called it the Breath of Life Initiative, a campaign to revise HOA policies statewide, ensuring no child with medical needs would ever be treated like a nuisance again. We built a small team. Nathan leading legal efforts, Maria coordinating with local support networks, Linda Hayes, another neighbor and former elementary school principal, designing educational programs for HOAs and schools. Even Greg Whitmore, seeking redemption, volunteered to testify about internal HOA practices he had once supported blindly. Meanwhile, the legal case moved swiftly. Karen had been indicted on multiple federal charges: deliberate interference with life-sustaining medical equipment, civil rights violations against a disabled individual, attempted assault with a deadly weapon. If convicted, she faced up to 30 years in prison. Her defense attorney, a slick, smooth-talking man from downtown Austin, tried to spin a story of unfortunate accidents and misunderstandings. But the video, the witness statements, the pattern of previous complaints, they painted a picture too damning to deny. Facing overwhelming evidence, Karen's team entered plea negotiations. The offer was harsh but fair: 10 years federal prison, no parole eligibility for 6. Karen hesitated for weeks, clinging to the delusion that she could somehow explain it all away. But public sentiment was a tidal wave she could not swim against. In a hushed federal courtroom packed with reporters, she accepted the plea. The gavel fell like a stone. Karen Whitmore, once the self-proclaimed queen of Eagle Ridge Estates, was escorted out in handcuffs, no longer the one giving orders, but the one forced to obey. Outside the courthouse, as cameras flashed and microphones jostled, I stood with Lily perched on my hip, her ventilator humming softly against my side. A reporter shouted, "Dr. Harris, what do you want people to take away from this?" I looked down at Lily, at her fierce, unbreakable spirit, and then back at the sea of faces. "That compassion matters more than appearances," I said. "That real communities protect their most vulnerable, not punish them." Lily grinned and waved at the cameras. "Be kind," she added, in a voice so clear and strong it silenced the crowd. The ripples of change spread far beyond our neighborhood. City councils across Texas introduced new ordinances protecting medically complex children in public and private community spaces. At least 5 major HOA management companies revised their training programs to include disability rights education. And Eagle Ridge? It transformed. The HOA elected a new board, one dedicated to inclusion, compassion, and transparency. The surveillance cameras Karen once used to police minor violations were dismantled. In their place, the community funded sensory gardens, wheelchair-accessible playground equipment, and public benches with built-in emergency medical ports. Lily became a symbol of resilience. Her video blog, Breathe Easy with Lily, gained thousands of followers, kids and parents tuning in weekly to hear her stories about life, hope, and science. One evening, sitting under the soft glow of our backyard string lights, Lily turned to me. "Mom," she said, "do you think Mrs. Whitmore ever knew what she did?" I thought for a moment. Maybe not," I said. "But it doesn't matter anymore." I smiled, pulling her close, feeling her small but mighty heartbeat against my side. "Because you're still breathing, you're still fighting, and you're making the world better just by being you." She beamed, a light so bright no storm could ever extinguish it. And somewhere, I knew, the ripples Lily created would keep spreading, teaching people that true strength isn't about power or control or manicured lawns. It's about compassion, about hope, about refusing to be silent when someone tries to smother the breath of life itself. 6 months later, the echoes of that summer still lingered, but they no longer haunted us. They propelled us forward. Eagle Ridge Estates had changed. Gone were the prim and proper gatherings where perfection trumped kindness. In their place bloomed backyard art fairs, charity cookouts, neighborhood game nights where children of every ability raced wheelchairs and scooters through obstacle courses built by laughing parents. The once pristine silence of perfectly manicured lawns was now filled with music, laughter, and, yes, the hum of medical equipment proudly visible and utterly unremarkable. And in the heart of it all was Lily, my daughter, the girl whose very existence had once been considered an eyesore by the old regime, had become the unofficial mayor of Eagle Ridge. Kids flocked to her like moths to a lighthouse, drawn by the gravity of her kindness, her wit, her unbreakable spirit. But it wasn't just our neighborhood that changed. The Breath of Life Foundation launched its first national conference that fall, right here in Austin. What started as a dream scribbled on a napkin during one of Lily's long hospital nights had grown into a full-fledged nonprofit, one dedicated to rewriting the narrative around children with medical complexities. We hosted workshops for HOA boards, school administrators, city planners, anyone willing to learn. Nathan Turner, ever the crusader, provided legal seminars. Maria coordinated accessibility audits for public spaces. Linda Hayes built educational curriculums titled Understanding Ability, Not Disability. Even Greg Whitmore, once the silent financier of Karen's tyranny, donated the funds needed to establish emergency grant programs for families facing discrimination. The conference buzzed with energy, media attention, and most importantly, hope. And standing proudly on the main stage, holding a small trophy taller than her ventilator cart, was Lily. Her keynote speech, written entirely by herself, though I helped with spelling, captivated the crowd. She didn't talk about suffering. She didn't wallow in the pain Karen had tried to inflict. Instead, she talked about superheroes, about how real superpowers aren't about flying or lifting cars. They're about resilience, about kindness when it's hardest, about breathing and fighting, even when the world tries to squeeze the air from your lungs. Sometimes bad things happen, Lily said, her voice steady over the microphone. But sometimes we get to choose what grows from them, anger or hope. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. I watched from backstage, tears blurring my vision, pride blooming in my chest so fiercely it felt like I might lift off the ground. Later that night, after the whirlwind of applause, interviews, and photographs faded into a quiet hotel suite, I helped Lily remove the day's celebratory decorations from her ventilator cart. Rainbow streamers, glittery star stickers, a tiny plush unicorn perched on top. She was quiet, thoughtful, twirling a piece of ribbon between her fingers. "Mom," she asked, curling up beside me on the couch, "do you think people like Mrs. Whitmore ever change?" I thought about it. About the courtroom where Karen had refused to meet my eyes. About the prison sentence she now served in silence. About the countless small acts of cruelty she'd committed long before the one that finally brought her down. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said honestly. "Maybe some people are too afraid to change. Maybe some never even try." Lily nodded, accepting the answer with a wisdom that belied her years. "But we change things," she said, smiling softly. "And maybe someone like me won't have to fight so hard next time." She leaned her head against my shoulder, her breathing soft and even, the ventilator's gentle hum a lullaby against the backdrop of the Texas night. Outside our window, the city sparkled, alive, imperfect, beautiful, and somewhere out there, I knew, another child would grow up braver because Lily existed, because she refused to hide, because she refused to be silent, because she turned pain into power. Karen Whitmore had tried to smother Lily's light. Instead, she had ignited a beacon seen far beyond the neatly trimmed hedges of Eagle Ridge estates. And as long as there were children who dared to breathe, to hope, to demand their rightful place in the world, Karen's cruelty would never, ever win. Not in our neighborhood, not in our city, not in our world, and certainly not in the heart of my daughter, who, against all odds, had become something more powerful than any HOA rulebook could ever contain. A hero, our hero, forever.